It's not a threat. I was really hurt by you and your friends, you know? I'm saying I'll forgive it for the price of a meal. So just leave your wallet and go. I realized that the apology was a lie after all. Not just Susan, but Bob also said with a mocking smile. This was their intention from the beginning. We sighed as we watched the two of them rant. Come on, just leave your wallet and go. You know what'll happen if you talk about this, right? Bob is in a higher position than Mike, you know. At those words, I smiled. If they're going that route, there's no need to hold back. Fine, but are you sure about this? You're gonna regret it. Thinking I was bluffing, the two burst out laughing. And they said, like we care. I took out my wallet and placed it on the table. Seeing that, the two mocked me, saying, Thanks. We'll give the wallet to Mike later. Then, thanks for the treat. Mike clenched his fist in anger, but I held him back and left the room, ignoring the two. Immediately after, we took action. You'll be the ones regretting this. I'm Catherine. I currently live a peaceful life with my husband Mike and our son John. I met my husband in college, and we began talking more after being paired up for group projects. We shared the same hobbies and soon started dating. After graduating and working for 3 years, we got married. A few years later, we were blessed with our son. Mike works in IT sales and is highly respected at his company. But I know he struggled in his early days. He overcame that period, and I admire him a lot. Apparently, his decision to go into sales was influenced by his family business. His father was involved in the management of a company, and Mike aspires to be like him. I still get tough feedback, but I want to be like Dad. I remember getting a lot of support from my in-laws when John was born. My mother-in-law graduated from a culinary school and currently works as the hostess at a renowned restaurant. Her husband is involved in the business side of it. Their motto is do your best at whatever you think of at that moment. I've always had a fondness for design, and alongside my administrative job, I would draw as a hobby. This hobby paid off over time. As I began to take on freelance web design projects, the scale of the projects gradually increased. Then one day, Mike approached me with a proposition. Hey Catherine, it looks like the company is in need of a designer. Want to give it a shot? They've got a few other prospects, but I really love your designs. It might get a bit busy, but I'll help out. What do you think? Catherine, there's a warmth in your designs. You should try it. Initially, I was hesitant, but my father-in-law, who happened to be visiting, agreed with Mike. Bolstered by their support, I decided to conceptualize a design. Once I committed, I was driven to excel. I researched the product and brainstormed with Mike to figure out the best design approach. Though it took some time, I finally crafted a design I was proud of. To my gratitude, my design was chosen. The product apparently did very well in sales, and both Mike and I were ecstatic when we heard the news. We thanked my in-laws for their support, and they were overjoyed, as if they had succeeded themselves. Catherine, it's incredible. It's all thanks to your design. Oh, it's nothing, really. Having this experience means a lot. Thank you. With this turn of events, I began to invest more time into web designing, which started as a side gig. Eventually, my earnings from design matched those from my day job, so I quit the administrative position and now work as a freelancer. Thanks to Mike's company, I also get the opportunity to design whenever they launch a new product. Our son, John, who's now in middle school, has grown into a bright and kind-hearted boy. He's currently passionate about playing soccer in his school club. Life's good. However, there's one thing that bothers me. Oh, Catherine, is that you? Hello. Oh, Susan, hi. It's about Susan. Her son, Jake, is also in the same soccer club as John. John and Jake get along really well. They even ended up in the same class this year and often hang out during weekends. John frequently talks about Jake. Jake once visited our house, and he's a very polite boy. I was glad John had such a good friend. But to be honest, Susan can be quite overbearing. I first met her during the school's open house. It was clear to me from the start that she was Jake's mother. Jake, you are definitely Mama's pride and joy. Mom, stop, it's embarrassing. It's fine. The class ended, and during the break, parents started conversing with the students. That's when Susan exclaimed loudly. Jake turned red and shook his head dismissively. I remember thinking at that moment what a loving mother she seemed to be, but that wasn't the reality. Really, Jake is by far the best. The others seemed to be just playing around during their presentation. The classroom grew momentarily silent at her words. Jake frowned slightly and retorted, "Didn't I tell you to stop it?" Everyone took their presentations seriously. I couldn't help but stare at her, wondering if her comment was really appropriate. Eventually, the parents had to leave for another meeting, so they began to exit the classroom. Mom. John, you did well in your presentation. You have club activities today, right? Yeah. Do your best. I'm gonna make your favorite hamburger steak for dinner. Really? Awesome. Right before leaving the classroom, John cheerfully spoke with his mother. Surrounding kids told him, "Lucky you, getting hamburger steak." I felt relieved seeing him being able to handle the situation smoothly. The parent-teacher meeting was open seating, and we were told we could sit anywhere. I chose a seat towards the corner. That's when Susan approached and started talking to me. "Aren't you John's mother?" Huh? I was taken aback by the sudden conversation, but she ignored my surprise and plopped down beside me. "I wanted to meet you. I'm Susan." Even though I felt cornered, I listened to her. But how did she know I was John's mother when we hadn't met before? Noticing my confusion, she continued. "You were talking about dinner with John earlier, right?" That's how I knew. And calling hamburger steak a treat seems so laid back. I was taken aback by her words. Why was she criticizing our dinner choice, especially since we just met? "John loves hamburger steak, and I don't think it's your place to comment," I replied. Whether she didn't like my response or not, she clearly looked displeased. "Well, that's true. My husband works at a major company, so he doesn't quite get the ordinary tastes." "What company does your husband work for?" I didn't feel like engaging with her, so I just brushed her off. Luckily, the meeting started, and things settled down. But right after, she asked me, "Wanna grab some coffee or something?" I tried to decline a few times, but she said, "Come on, it's just some mom friends bonding. Besides, Jake and John are good friends." Left with little choice, I agreed. We exchanged contact information and went for coffee before heading home. She boasted about her wealthy life and her husband during our coffee chat. Since then, she invited me for coffee several times a month. Even though our kids got along, I wasn't thrilled, but I agreed. One time I declined. She mentioned, "You know, my husband knows a lot of people, even John's club coach." It felt like a veiled threat. So I kept up the reluctant friendship with Susan. What shocked me further was discovering that Susan's husband worked at the same company as Mike. I remember nearly spitting out my drink in surprise when I found out. She had mentioned it was a major company, but never said which one. I hadn't imagined it'd be the same one Mike worked for. I learned this when she visited my home one day. Jake had come over to play, and Susan came to pick him up in the evening. I had hoped to just meet her at the door, but she came in since our kids were there. "Isn't your husband working for XYZ Corporation, Catherine?" As she said this, I nearly choked on my tea. Seeing my shocked face, Susan seemed pleased, and I had a bad feeling about where this was headed. "Why?" "Because I saw a business card in your room with your husband's name on it, and I recognized the company name." "Hold on, are you saying you just went into our room?" "No, I didn't mean to. I was just looking for the bathroom and happened to open the wrong door." I was truly glad my sons weren't around to hear this. I had given Susan directions to the restroom, so I genuinely thought she was lying. But I had only told her verbally, so I couldn't really push back too hard. Indeed, in Mike's room, he has business cards for work. I designed the business cards for Mike's company, so there are several different types, and he had some displayed under a desk protector. She must have seen those. Stunned and at a loss for words, Susan approached and said something. "I really don't like you too." Her previously friendly demeanor had vanished, and Susan's eyes were now sharp and piercing as she glared at me. "Do you enjoy taking work away from other people's husbands?" "Excuse me?" Not understanding the implication of Susan's words, I just stood there, stunned. She threw out one last barb. "Well, whatever. Just remember, I'm gonna make sure you regret this." I was at a loss for words and later recounted everything to Mike. "So, Bob's wife is Catherine's friend?" "It seems so." It must be a coincidence, but she seemed to have some sort of grudge against us. Who's this Bob guy? Thinking a bit, Mike took a deep breath and started explaining. I don't think it's good to discuss such things, but Bob is in the planning department. He's quite assertive and, from what Mike explained, the product planning department shares its products with the sales team to generate revenue. Bob, who's considered a top player in the product planning department, not only holds a significant position but is also well known for a particular trait. That trait seems to be his strong belief in meritocracy, or in other words, a lot depends on whether Bob is passionate about something or not. He's quite the meritocrat. Some people even say it's like heaven or hell working with him. I see. But I still don't understand why Susan hates us so much. Yeah, I'm not sure either. I don't have a deep relationship with Bob. Sorry for getting you involved in this mess. It's fine, but what about John and Jake? It's not good for the kids to be so close and their parents to be like this. Yeah, I'll try to find out more about it. Thanks. A few days after our conversation, Susan reached out. Feeling anxious, I answered her call, and she sounded much more apologetic than usual. I'm so sorry about the other day, I was just stressed about my husband's work not going well. I decided to hear her out as she sounded different. She apologized and hoped that we could get along since we have husbands working at the same company. So, how about we all go out for dinner? Considering her previous behavior, I was hesitant, but thinking of our kids' friendship, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. That's fine. Thank you. I'll arrange the place, and I'll let you know the details later. She sounded pleased as she ended the call. The day arrived, and we headed to the restaurant Susan had chosen. It was a fancy place, renowned for its seafood. However, even after a while, there was no sign of Susan and her husband. I tried calling her. When I mentioned my name to the receptionist, the staff member looked concerned. I'm sorry, but the reservation is only for 2 people. What? Mike and I were puzzled. What was going on? Asking the staff member to wait, I immediately called Susan. Hello Susan? So, the restaurant just told me the reservation is for 2 people. She laughed and told us to wait a moment. Soon, Susan and a man emerged. Seeing the man, Mike said, Bob, good to see you. It was then that I realized the man was Bob. Grinning widely, Susan and Bob looked at us. I had a bad feeling. I'm sorry, I made a mistake with the reservation. Susan's nonchalance bothered me. Then she said something even more shocking. Well, mistakes happen. But let's not waste the food, right? What are you getting at? Look, Mike, I'm soon gonna be the head of the planning department. You're doing well in sales, but you're still a newbie. If you don't want things to go sour, you might want to listen to what I have to say. Are you threatening us? It's not a threat. Catherine, and you have hurt me deeply. I'm offering you a way to make amends. Just leave your wallet and go. I realized that the apology was indeed a lie after all. This was their intention from the beginning. We sighed as we watched the 2 of them arguing. Look, just leave your wallet and get out. By the way, you do know what will happen if you tell anyone about this, right? Bob's higher up than Mike, after all. At that, I couldn't help but smile. If they're playing it that way, there's no need to hold back anymore. All right, but are you guys sure about this? You're gonna regret it. Maybe they thought I was bluffing, but the 2 burst into laughter. Then they blurted out, like we care. I took out my wallet and placed it on the table. Seeing that, the 2 jeered at me. We'll give Mike his wallet back later. Thanks for the treat then. Mike looked furious, clenching his fists, but I calmed him down. Ignoring the 2, I left the room. We quickly took action. They're the ones who are gonna regret this. Yeah, can't let people who pull stunts like this go unpunished. After a while, a call came in on my phone. Recognizing the number, I answered with a smile. Catherine? Looks like we're almost done here. With that, I handed the phone over to Mike. After a brief exchange, Mike hung up. Well, shall we go? Seems like things have heated up. Mike looked very upset. We then headed back to the restaurant Susan had chosen. Once there, we asked the waiter to call the owner. Soon after, the landlady, who was also Mike's mom, hurried out. Thank you for your help. I'm sorry for the trouble. It's fine. People like them need to be taught a lesson. The mother-in-law looked just as angry as Mike did earlier. We were led to a room. As we slid the door open slightly, a tense atmosphere was evident. Inside were Susan, Bob, and some senior officials from Mike's company, including his father-in-law. Now, why had it come to this? It's simple. The restaurant Susan chose happened to be the one run by Mike's mom. We realized it as soon as Susan told us to meet there. It was a coincidence, but since we were going there anyway, Mike decided to call his mom. There, it was revealed that Susan had only booked for 2. That's right. We knew she hadn't made a reservation for 4, but played along anyway. Once we understood Susan's intentions, we immediately reported it to the mother-in-law present. Being straightforward people, both Mike's mom and Mike reported it to his dad. That led to the current situation. Bob, what's going on here? A man asked Bob. Well, it's... No excuses, just tell us everything. Bob was flustered, understandably so. That guy is Mr. Young from the planning department's top management. Next to the CEO is someone from the sales department's upper echelon. I think my father-in-law might have called them over. Well, he was the former CEO, so it's understandable how he'd react if he found out his family was being treated this way, especially in his wife's restaurant, by employees from when he was in charge. Right, actually my father-in-law used to be the CEO of the company where Mike works. He's now retired and not involved in its management, but he was highly respected during his tenure. Even now, he's still in touch with company folks. After hearing the story from my mother-in-law, he immediately reached out to the company to explain the situation. When the CEO hears that one of his employees is extorting money from another employee by using their position, he's gonna come running. The 2, who didn't know this, were surprised by the sudden appearance of the company executives at the restaurant. They seemed unable to grasp the situation. Mike said he wanted me to accept this. Yes, I was invited because my husband often works with Mike. Even now, I'm taken aback by the blatant lies coming out of their mouths. They show no remorse. And I wonder if they don't realize that such obvious lies will be found out. Then, to cut off Bob's words, Mike entered the room. To the astonishment of the 2, Mike politely said, "Excuse me." "You." Bob glared at Mike as soon as he saw him. We understood the situation completely, but for Susan and Bob, it must have been confusing. Before Bob could make a move, my father-in-law spoke up. "I'm the former CEO, George. I'm retired now and have handed over the company to young Mr. Young here. By the way, Mike is my son. But he didn't get his job at the company through any connection of mine. In fact, I wasn't involved in his hiring at all. And I should mention that this restaurant is run by my wife." Listening to my father-in-law's explanation, the 2 seemed to finally grasp the situation, and their faces turned pale in an instant. Susan let out an almost wordless sigh, and Bob was shaking uncontrollably. Oh no. Susan, looking as if she couldn't believe it, seemed more flustered than I'd ever seen her. Let's cut the chit-chat and get down to discussing the matter at hand. The discussion, or rather the one-sided grilling they received, began in a heavy atmosphere, and the 2 were struggling to find their words. Susan's resentment towards me was apparently related to some design work at the company. From a proposal Mike brought up, it seems Susan was another candidate they had considered. Originally, when the project was discussed in the company, my design was chosen after a search among friends and family for talented designers. This boosted Mike's reputation. Moreover, despite being relatively young, Mike had mastered his own sales techniques, earning trust from his juniors and contributing to the company's performance. It irritated me that he was taking credit for accomplishments that he'd achieved with the help of his wife's talents. I personally think Mike has genuinely been working hard, but didn't you feel the same when you received advice from him? That left Bob at a loss for words, which was accentuated by a sharp comment from a senior planning department executive. Bob also felt slighted because, after finishing their sales tasks, the sales department would give precise advice to the planning team. This irritated Bob, making him feel like his products were being overshadowed by Mike's. As Mike's answers continued to receive praise, Bob grew resentful and frequently vented to Susan. Then, one day, Susan overheard me talking about my work with some other moms. I loved designing and often drew illustrations for school events like PTA meetings. Some of the moms knew I worked freelance. So when Susan found out that I was the designer chosen for the company project, she started picking on me. Having heard this, we were just speechless. We were honestly astounded that they would conceive such a scheme out of jealousy. Moreover, we learned another shocking truth. I'm really disappointed in you. Please wait, I'm truly sorry about this. While Bob was begging, Mr. Young coldly said, I've heard from one of our planning department guys. I hope it's not true, but there's a significant amount of money being spent on planning. Is it really all going towards actual products? At this, Bob froze, and Susan went pale. It seems Bob had been embezzling funds under the guise of planning expenses. This revelation took even us by surprise. It seems Susan was also complicit in the scheme. How'd you get caught? You said it would be a secret. I don't know. Bob, angered by Susan's words, yelled back like that. The expression on his face was that of someone who had inadvertently admitted to embezzlement, but it was too late. Mr. Young sighed and bowed his head to his father-in-law. I'm truly sorry. I didn't expect something like this to happen in the company that Mr. George entrusted me with. It's my lack of supervision. No, it's not you, Mr. Young, or the senior staff of sales and marketing. It's this couple who can't do anything but play dirty tricks. You both are gonna pay for this. Hold on, she's the one to blame. Excuse me? Weren't you the one who said we could embezzle money? Hey, we're in a store, keep it down. Shut up. If you hadn't interfered. How dare you act all high and mighty when you're the son? Well, if the husband is like this, so is the wife. In the end, Mr. Young handed the arguing couple over to the police. It was only natural since they had embezzled money. It caused quite a scene and was a hassle for the store, but the mother-in-law handled it with a dignified attitude, and the situation was quickly under control. I heard from Mike that Bob got fired from the company and was apparently sued for damages by the company. They dealt with him pretty strictly, probably because it involved the company's products. Jake was taken in by Susan's parents for a while. After the incident, Susan's parents came over to apologize. From what I heard then, the couple is living quietly in isolation, possibly as a form of penance. I couldn't help but wonder how they ended up like this when I saw how sincere Susan's parents seemed. I was worried about Jake, but the company made sure that no word of the incident got out, so thankfully, no rumors spread at school, and Jake was fine. It's unfortunate what happened to Jake. I talked to John the other day, and Jake seems to be doing fine at school. He's a good kid, and everyone trusts him. Instead of being down about his parents, he seems more angry at them. That's good to hear. I haven't seen Susan and Bob since that incident. Jake, however, still hangs out with John and even comes over to our place from time to time. Watching the two of them play so happily, I hope they never end up like us. By a stroke of luck, we were saved this time, but I truly believe that our daily actions attract the people and opportunities in our lives. I want to cherish my relationships with others more than ever.